Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.
Hello and welcome to the Expert Interview Series. Today we have with us Mr. Manish Kumar Bisht, a seasoned banking and capital market professional with over 20 years of experience, currently leading financial crime team with one of the leading professional service firm. Manish specializes in financial crime compliance, leading a dedicated team of experts spanning more than 18 countries. Throughout his career journey, Manish has demonstrated a remarkable ability to develop and execute successful business strategies, fostering strong client relationships, drive operational efficiency, and deliver outstanding results. Welcome to the Expert Interview Series, sir, and
Thanks.
hope our viewers get to learn from your experiences.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you.
Right. So we begin with the first and the most important question. If you can share more about your journey and what was the point or what was the area that helped you develop interest in the field of financial crime compliance?
So I'll say that I was not aware about financial crime, to be honest, when I started my career. This happened back in 2004 when I joined one of the organization, my ex-organization called Genpact. And usually at that point of time, what will happen is that you will hire resources and then you will assign teams when you're part of the new hire orientation training. So somebody would come and tell you that you're part of this particular team. And there was a leader who came into the room at that point of time and he called out my name and said, you're going to be part of the risk underwriting team, which is a fraud underwriting team. To be honest, I had no idea at that point of time in terms of what this team is all about. As I started getting trained by my SMEs and my trainers, I realized this is not a normal process. This is not a process that you learn one time and then you almost like follow it forever from there on. Which means that, you're looking at transactions, you're looking at suspicious behaviors. At times you come across certain hits which may look very genuine in nature. And you may feel that you may have a terrorist hiding somewhere and you kind of located it more digitally. That caught my attention and I got interested to that. And ever since, I never looked back. I only kept adding more competencies. So while I started with fraud, then later on started learning more about AML, what AML is all about, then anti-bribery corruption. So it just went on over the past 22, 23 years. Yeah.
More about not learning from the book, it's about doing on the job.
Absolutely, because that's what excites me, to be honest. Even today, even I've completed over 22 years in this field. So when I go to office, it's not about in terms of, okay, what's new? It's saying what I know, what I've seen in the past 22 years, but it keeps surprising me all the time. And when someone calls me to say, this is an alert that we have received, what do you have to say? I always go back in my times and 20 years back and I start looking at those alerts and it's a fascinating competency, to be honest. But more importantly, I see today, especially in today's world, it's a responsibility which normally people don't realize. In our professional network, the people who are doing it have such a critical job. They may not be on the field for that matter, but because we are a digital world, the data is everywhere. So it's important that you have right professionals looking at data and highlighting risk for the organization and more importantly for the community at large.
Thank you so much, sir. I could see the spark in your eyes. It's as if there's a new graduate who's just come out of college and joined. So it's the same passion, I think, that was 22 years back. And even now I could see that.
Absolutely. I love this domain of mine. And as in, I don't see it as a job, to be honest. I see as in, yes, it is a job. It pays me well. But at the same time, I know the job that we are doing. And it's not about me, the professionals all around the world working with multiple organizations. For a minute, if you just take them off, this world is going to be a messier place.
We're working day in, day out, handling compliance issues and, meeting out these financial crimes that are happening all day in, day out. So what does a typical day look like for you at work?
Yeah, so my day at work is very complex, to be honest now, because part of my role, because I support multiple countries, multiple geographies, which means when I start my day, I may be talking to my Singapore counterparts, my New Zealand counterparts. During somewhere in the midday, I've started talking to my UK stakeholders. I've started talking to my Europe stakeholders. As we progress, somewhere in the night time, I've started talking to my US counterparts. So pretty much in a single day, I'm talking to multiple stakeholders, and all of these are key leaders, risk management leaders all over the group, right? So I always keep learning because there's so much happening. Sometimes we talk about regulation changes, sometimes we talk about what's changing in terms of technology, and then in between, obviously, I'm interacting with my team, and my team is also globally present because my team is in India, they're in Manila, they're in Poland. So I'm talking to different set of individuals throughout, understanding some of the key areas, and then there are forums. Then we go in more like a brainstorming without any agenda. To be honest, more like a white paper to say what can we do more. How can we implement technology advancement within our team? Is it a possibility or not? And if it is a possibility, what risk are we looking at? And if there are risks, in terms of how can we mitigate those risks? If we can't mitigate those risks, can we at least reduce that particular risk, and whom we need to contact? So there's a lot which goes on in my day-to-day work. But yeah, so that's a typical day of me. Yeah.
Sitting in India and yet traveling all across the globe.
Absolutely.
So just a small question that came to my mind. So if, for example, there's a threat that has been detected, what's the first call of action?
So if there is a threat which has been detected, obviously, first and foremost, we try to identify in terms of whether we have, as an internally, we have assessed the risk appropriately without raising a flag. So that's the first thing that we would do internally, because we don't want to raise a flag when we are not sure. So that's a second level of, I'll say, an investigation or review which will happen. Post that, we will get in touch with the respective risk management leaders all over the globe, for that matter, and the impacted party, and the probability of that risk. Right. So all that conversations will take place, and if required, we maybe hold on certain activities, or maybe we take corrective actions. Maybe it is maybe because of our process, we might have not identified that risk more preventively. Right. So we might have to do more. So all of that would normally happen.
So we move to the next question. Of course, as you said that you are handling teams globally. So what's your strategy to build and lead a diverse team of experts spanning across different countries and cultures?
Yeah, so I think that's obviously it is complex, but it's not that complex, to be honest. I think the important skill is that you have to keep listening to everyone, because everyone may have a different perspective for that matter. But I've always believed in terms of, if you understand the why of your work, right, the purpose of your work, everything else becomes easy, to be honest. Then culture, dynamics of the team, or the teams are located across the regions, across the countries. Nothing really matters over a period of time if they really understand why. And that's why I was referring to, in terms of why I do this job is more important, right? If my action can save community at large, right? Because we are a big organization and there are multiple other organizations which are supporting. Sometimes we don't want to become a platform for wrong activities. And hence it is important that we kind of safeguard our organizations, and by which obviously safeguarding community at large. And I always give this an example, and it is obviously, it's not a real example, but let me share this with you just from a stories standpoint. I always say that let's assume that there is a bomb blast which happened somewhere in one of the cities. Okay, let's assume that as a situation. It's a and obviously the law enforcement agency goes and investigate that particular scenario. And then obviously, as part of that scenario, while they're looking at criminals, they're also looking at money and how that act was supported. Now, as they support that act, and they find out that this particular transaction, as in there was one transaction which helped a particular perpetrator to commit that crime on that particular scene. And when they roll back, and it's like a back channel investigation, so you're going back and back in times. And as you do that investigation, you realize that there was an alert which was triggered at a particular banking institution or a financial institution. And there was a financial crime professional who was sitting on it, and he thought this is a transaction. So if that alert would have been triggered at that point of time, that money would have never even reached that particular person, and that person would have not been able to commit that heinous crime on the ground, right? And hence, if you understand the why of your job in terms of what you do, and if you correlate that if I would have taken the right action and not considering that as a transaction, but as a community service, maybe many lives would have been saved. And it is happening as we speak, right? Child trafficking is happening. There's a lot of crime which is happening. And if we as professionals take it seriously and we understand the why of it, to be honest, doesn't matter whether your team is in one part of the globe or the other part of the globe, because the moment you know the purpose of your job, then everything becomes easy.
It's a serious job, and your eyes and ears need to be open at all point of time.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you so much. I think you elaborated it beautifully, stating the why has to be important for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we move to the next and the most important question. As we see, the technology is evolving day in day out, and it is of course enhancing financial crime detection and prevention efforts. So how do you interpret the technology is evolving, and how is it enhancing the detection of financial crime?
No, it is very, very important, and I think people should embrace it, to be honest, in terms of technology and what it can do for you. I think financial crime, it requires a lot of research and investigation, which means you're going around in different sources, you're looking at a lot of different data sets at this point of time. And obviously, because we are human, if we are going into multiple sources, we are looking at multiple details. We are not perfect, as in we will make mistake at this point of time. And as I said, the domain that we support, and it's more of a community service, right? You can't go wrong for a lot many occasions. As I just gave you an example in terms of what one mistake can do, right? Which means our responsibility is to deliver 100% quality at all point of time. No matter what I say that I will do it, but it is humanly not possible to do it because the amount of manual work it requires. And hence the technology can help to enhance. And I am already seeing that technology advancement, to be honest. I think there are various organizations who have worked brilliantly in terms of solving some of the complex issues. Let me give an example. Let's say a transaction monitoring business, right? And let's say an individual looking at your financial statement for over 2 years period and trying to figure it out. Are there any trends? Are there any triggers? Are there any risk categories that I can identify, let's say for puja, for that matter? Now, you might take the full day to be able to look at that particular banking statement, and you might still end up making a mistake because there are so many transactions, right, within that bank statement. Now, the technology that exists today can look at that bank statement and give you a summary and a sentiment of the risk. Now, the only thing that you need to do is that wherever the technology is triggering you or hinting you, go and look at this particular transaction, go and look at that particular transaction. So from 1,000 transactions, now the technology is asking you to look at only 3 transactions, right? Very focused approach for that matter. Now you go and look at those focused approach and try to find out. Imagine the amount of efficiency that it will create and obviously the effectiveness. Right? Because now you don't have to look at 1,000 things. You can just look at 5 things. So I'm all for technology, and I think technology is must at this point of time, especially in our domain. I know many individuals or many professions might say it's a complex work, but I'll say everything is complex until you try it or try a new technology for that matter. So there are many complex things in the world which has been solved with the use of technology, and we can always use technology in this space also.
Also understand that if we are evolving as financial crime professionals, people who are performing the crime, they are also technologically advancing. So we need to be a step ahead of them at all point of time. Of course, you've elaborated much about the trends that are happening, the strategies that should be used. What are some of the common misconceptions about the financial crime compliance domain?
So I'll say the biggest misconception is that, we keep hearing about AML fines, which has been levied on multiple banking institutions, cryptocurrency organizations. I think in 2024 itself, the overall fine value was over $3.4 billion, about $3 billion and above. If you look back in terms of decades, you'll probably find it's a massive, massive fine which has been levied all across the world, for that matter. However, the misconception is that everyone thinks that it is happening with somebody else, right? Okay, my processes are unique, and I have the right set of individuals. We have the best of the technology. We have figured this out, and it is happening with somebody else. It will never happen to us. And they will usually make a case study out of it for someone else, and they will just give that case study to their respective teams and say, please go and read about it. So I see that as the biggest misconception. Until that happens, nobody takes it seriously, but it continues to be one of the biggest misconceptions, especially in this domain, right? Which is quite not right, considering the examples that we already have all over the world in terms of that. So that is one I'll say. The other is that sometimes the people feel that it is one size can fit all. The regulations are very complex. Every countries have their particular regulations. There are different ways of identifying, let's say, money laundering for that matter, and there are different activities that you need to do. UBO identification is very different for countries to country, right? In terms of how do you identify beneficial owners, how do you conduct research for that matter. I'll say even the Google research are very different if you do that based in India versus if you do that based in US, right? It's very different, for example. So it's very complex. So the moment you think that it is one fit all solution, it is not the case. You have to customize it to make it real for that particular geography, for that particular country. So I think that is, I'll say, the other misconception. And the other misconception I've already seen is money laundering means large transactions, right? Somebody may be dealing with millions in dollars and, just catch the person and you will catch. What they don't realize is the fraudsters, as you said, the perpetrators, right? They're very smart. I think they're very advanced. They understand the nuances for that matter. And there are multiple examples in the world wherein the perpetrators found out loopholes of smaller transactions, right? And how did they mix that smaller transaction within the financial institution so nobody would know for that matter? Because generally you have a limit in terms of if you go to Australia or let's say in US, you have a limit of $10,000 or 10,000 AUD for that matter, which triggers a suspicious transaction. But if I make it, let's say $9,000, the system might not be able to detect it, right, on that. So they sometimes use smaller transactions to navigate around some of these policies. So that's another misconception. So as in there are many, but I think these are some of the few misconceptions which still exist.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that makes sense. If it does not hit you, doesn't it is not going to hurt you.
That's correct.
At the end of the day. So, of course, as you said, that financial crime and compliance and regulation frameworks needs to be studied at a broader spectrum. So, how do you stay updated with the latest trends, regulations, and the advancements that are happening in the field?
So, I'll say it's a multiple areas that you have to invest. See, as a professional, and I keep saying this all the time, and I'll give you another example. Right? Let's say in India, for that matter, you want to become a doctor. Okay. Obviously, you have to do a lot of study. Obviously, you have to clear a lot of exams. But ultimately, let's assume that Pooja becomes Dr. Pooja Sachdeva at some point of time. Right? Now, because you're in a medical field, obviously, you have been taught certain ways. Let's say you become a surgeon, right? Let's say surgeon as one of the category. But you don't keep in touch in terms of what's happening in the medical community, right? What advancement is happening, technology advancement, robotics for that matter. Or other changes which are happening all over the world in terms of there are journals published all over the world in terms of doctor, right? I think you will become irrelevant after 10 years, right? As in nobody is going to take away that Dr. Pooja Sachdeva from your name because that's going to remain forever for that matter. But that doctor itself will become irrelevant because you have not invested time and energy to know in terms of what's happening. Similarly, in our field, as in just because I've spent 20 years does not mean that I will stay relevant after 10 more years. Let's assume that if I stop learning today, right? If you talk to me after 10 years, maybe you'll find I'm irrelevant, even though I'll say that I have, let's say, 30 years of experience because I've not invested my time. And how do you invest your time? There are different sources. You go on Google, you just type AML, just as one AML as word, right? Just do a normal search. You will find so many, details over there that you can read through. There are seminars happening. There are webinars happening. Multiple organizations do it absolutely free multiple times. You can always register for it. You have to take out time and invest for that matter. For example, who are the regulators that are all around the world from an AML standpoint. You can always go on their website. You will find there are sections wherein they talk about case studies for that matter. They highlight cases for that matter, right? If you even go through that, you will understand. So there are various sources, YouTube could be one of the sources. You can look at multiple videos. Google can be one of the sources that you can look at. And obviously your network, right? Your network, you have to talk to them more frequently, understand what's happening, and build your network, right? Build your network who will add value to that domain, who will share that knowledge with you. So I'll say if you don't, so it's your job is not going to take you far, right? You have to invest. And you have to invest in all of these sources for that matter for you to remain relevant. To be honest, in our field, only a domain expertise is not going to take away far, right? You need to have an understanding of technology also at the same time, right? What technology is bringing the change in your particular domain? How do you mix both of them together? and how do you build your career after that. So I think it's a combination of that, and none of this information is paid. To be honest, it's not expensive. It is available for all. It is all about you have to take out time and invest yourself and learn the skills.
Makes sense. It's more about learning for yourself. You're not learning for anybody else. Investing in yourself is more important.
Yeah,
And of
that's
course,
correct.
information is available just one click of a button. That's as we move to the end of the interview. The most important question, of course, for the people who are going to view this video, those who are trying to make a career in financial crime, what are the key skills that they should focus on while developing competency in the field of financial crime compliance?
So I think there are different stages in terms of your career, but let's assume that you're starting as an entry level. You have no information, you're getting into this particular domain. The one key aspect that I look at, for that matter, in terms of your ability to make decision. Decision making is key in our thing, or your ability to be able to interpret a lot of different things, right? And to summarize it well. I think somehow we do it all the time in our personal life, right? We just have to, move that particular skill over to this. I'll say what they need to do to begin with if they really want to build a career is have a better understanding in terms of what AML is and what is the regulation, and just go to the history of it in terms of what changes have we seen in the past 10 years, so that they will have a relevance in terms of why are they investing their time in this particular domain. And second, as I said, it is the same conversation. You have open access to Google, you have open access to YouTube, you have open access to websites of regulators. Go and invest your time, form your own opinion after that in terms of why it is important. But more importantly, as I said, do not please start your journey in this domain considering this only as a job. The same example, because if you miss one transaction, there are many communities which might get impacted because of your action. So please consider that as a responsibility as you get in. But obviously invest some time to do your own research, form your own opinion, and then start your career. And if you are strong with your integrity and your intention to continuously learn, to be honest, you will make a career out of it in this domain.
Thank you so much, sir. You've been very precise and to the point, giving right information. And of course, as you said earlier, the why is very important when you're entering any domain. So thank you so much for the
Thank
time
you.
and your advice that you've given. I think many will learn and imbibe all the skills that are required.
Thank you. Thanks, Pooja. Thanks for your time.
Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.